Indian states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
கலர்களை சிகப்பு மஞ்சள் வெள்ளை பச்சை போன்ற பல வண்ணங்களை தீட்டி அது அந்த கோலத்தில் நாங்கள் மயில் கோலம் பூக்கோலம் அப்புறம் ரங்கோலி கோலம் மயில் கோலம் போன்ற வகைகள் கோலங்களை விட்டு
Good morning, India and viewers across the globe. It's just past 8 this 27th September morning and we're back again with Breakfast Show. I'm Anil Thomas and over the next 1 hour, we'll take you through the major happenings across India and the globe from the field of politics, business and sports. Also a regular segment on health and good news India story. Our top focus over the day, our continued coverage on the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's US visit. Diplomatic battleground shifts to New York as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is to address the United Nations General Assembly tonight. Meanwhile, on his second Kashmir visit since August 5th, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval orders tougher anti-terror operations. We'll be getting you live inputs from our team of correspondents tracking the top stories for us. But first up this Friday morning, the headlines we're tracking at the top of this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address the United Nations General Assembly in New York tonight, likely to focus on issues ranging from terrorism to climate change. BRICS nation condemns all forms of terrorism, also urges developed countries to support developing countries for more effective international action on climate change. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval calls upon paramilitary forces, police and civil administration to win hearts of the Kashmiris. Also, Centre announces mega credit outreach plan. First round of plans in 250 districts from October 3rd to 7th ahead of the festive season. In international news, United States to send 200 troops, air defense missiles and radars to Saudi Arabia to strengthen its defense in the wake of attacks on its oil facilities earlier this month. And in sports, Indian men's hockey team beat Belgium in the opening match of the 5-match test series in Europe. Mandeep Singh and Akashdeep Singh score in the 2-0 win for Men in Blue. And now for the stories in detail. As the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly is underway in New York, several world leaders have already spoken to highlight issues that matter to their countries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the annual UN General Assembly session on Friday evening. Prime Minister is likely to highlight his government's key initiative towards poverty alleviation, affordable health care and steps taken to combat two global scourges like terrorism and climate change.
World leaders have gathered at the United Nations headquarters in New York City for the 74th session of the UN General Assembly. All eyes are on the general debate at the UN headquarters, where world leaders will highlight the issues that matter most to their countries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to address the annual high-level UN General Assembly session on September 27th. Prime Minister Modi's speech at the UN General Assembly comes at a time when India is ready to play a larger role on the world stage. India has made significant improvements in almost all international rankings and indices. At various global platforms, India has forcefully raised the issue of terrorism and said no country in the world today was safe from it. India, a victim of cross-border terrorism, has called for efforts to eliminate terrorism in all its forms. India has maintained that a terrorist attack anywhere in the world should be considered as terrorism, not good or bad terrorism.
आतंकवाद का जो मोड है वो बदल रहा है। पहले था कि ह्यूमन बीइंग्स क्रॉस करते थे बॉर्डर या अब आजकल जो इंटरनेट और कनेक्टिविटी हो गई है उसमें आतंकवाद का डेफिनेशन ही बदल गया है। इंटरनेट को ये टेररिस्ट नैरेटिव से अलग करवाएं। और ये एक मुद्दा है जो हम जिसको आगे बढ़ाएंगे, क्योंकि ये दुनिया में आज उभरता हुआ मुद्दा है।
India has also emphasized the need for an early adoption of the Comprehensive Convention on Global Terrorism. Due to growing prominence of India on the world stage, India has also called for an early reform of the UN Security Council and expansion of its permanent and non-permanent members. India has said that the 21st century had its own set of challenges and the United Nations needs to reflect contemporary realities.
India's place in the world is very different from what it was before. Even from 5 years ago, things have changed. There is a greater desire for the world and a large number of countries to engage with us more intensely. Reformed multilateralism is a persistent theme in India's approach towards international affairs.
Besides, efforts for poverty alleviation, affordable healthcare services to all, quality education would be another area. Other areas of focus of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address at the UN General Assembly. In the face of worsening climate change, Prime Minister may also draw attention to world leaders towards some of the key initiatives towards climate change, including campaigns against single-use plastic. Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, Ujala Scheme, Saubhagya Scheme, Zero Effect, Zero Defect policy, among others. The Prime Minister may also point out the country's remarkable progress in moving towards achieving sustainable development goals. In his previous address at the UN General Assembly in 2014, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had received standing ovation from the world leaders after he introduced to them the benefits of yoga.
योग हमारी पुरातन पारंपरिक अमूल्य देन है। योग मन व शरीर, विचार व कर्म, संयम व उपलब्धि की एकात्मता का तथा मानव व प्रकृति के बीच सामंजस्य का मूर्त रूप है।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is leading efforts to scrap single-use plastic by 2022, is set to launch the campaign against single-use plastic on the 2nd of October, the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi.
India is shaping the global discourse and leading by example in the fight against climate change. It is making serious efforts towards disaster risk reduction. It is setting new global benchmarks with the pace with which it is moving towards attaining sustainable development goals, from poverty and hunger eradication to providing quality health care and education. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the 74th session of the UNGA come 27 September, he is expected to highlight the progress that India is making towards becoming a new India, lead global action and make a renewed pitch for reformed multilateralism and for solidarity in the fight against terrorism. With cameraman Loknath in New York, Munmun Bhattacharya for DD News and DD India.
Well, continuing with his engagements with world leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral talks with the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani on the sidelines of the UNGA in New York. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held a meeting with the President of Cyprus in New York. During the meeting, discussions on various issues took place between the two world leaders. The South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation meeting was held in New York on Thursday. At the meeting, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar highlighted India's contribution to the SAARC. In a tweet, he said, and I quote, "The example of South Asian satellite shows how India has been taking up the initiatives that bear prosperity to the neighborhood." South Asian satellite was launched in 2017 with an intention to arrive at scientific solutions to address poverty in the SAARC region. The minister added that South Asian University also sets an example of India building academic excellence that will have generational impact. The 1,174 students graduated contribute immensely to the development of the respective member states. We are committed to giving 100% capital cost towards construction of SAU. Jaishankar also outlined that if the grouping has lagged behind, it is because South Asia does not have normal trade and connectivity that other regions do, and regionalism has taken root in every corner of the world. It is unfortunate that we have not made any headway with respect to some connectivity initiatives such as motor vehicles and railways agreement. Similarly, there has been no progress in the SAARC Regional Air Service Agreement initiated by India. He also mentioned other success stories of last year, including the extension of the National Knowledge Network to our SAARC partner countries. In a tweet, he said NKN extension has been completely implemented in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. NKN extension to Bhutan was inaugurated by the Prime Minister. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar attended the annual meeting of the BRICS nations foreign ministers on the margins of the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly. The ministers reiterated their strong condemnation of terrorism and all its forms and manifestations whenever, wherever and by whomsoever committed. The ministers also urged the need for concerted efforts to counter terrorism in accordance with the international law and under UN, and stressed in this regard on the need for early adoption of a comprehensive convention on international terrorism.
On BRICS strategies for countering terrorism, and welcome the establishment of the subgroups on capacity building, countering foreign terrorist fighters, use of internet for terror purposes, countering radicalization and addressing terror financing. This will lead to greater focus in these specific areas.
Well, at the BRICS meet, the ministers also reaffirmed their commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and called for redoubled efforts for its timely implementation. He also highlighted ban on single-use plastic recently announced by the Government of India. He welcomed the special focus of the high-level segment of the UNGA 74 on sustainable development and the holding of the climate and SDG summits and high-level events on health and financing for development.
I want to highlight that Prime Minister Modi participated in the UN 2019 Climate Summit, which was held on 23 September, and reiterated our continued commitment to fight against climate change. India has announced the start of a large-scale national campaign to address plastic pollution and called for a stop to the single use of plastics. India has also hosted the COP14 of the UN Convention on Combating Desertification earlier this month. India looks forward to working on various themes and with all relevant stakeholders during India's presidency of COP from 2019 to 21.
Well, speaking on the crisis of fugitive economic offenders, the External Affairs Minister said that this continues to be a grave reason for economic slowdown. He also urged his BRICS counterparts to work in the direction to tackle this menace.
That of fugitive economic offenders. We in the BRICS need to continue to work together against economic offenders and fugitives. It has emerged as a serious threat to developing economies by illegally diverting assets away from their developmental agenda. We look forward to your continuing attention and support on this important issue.
India, Brazil and South Africa on Thursday pledged to promote the reform of the multilateral system through cooperation in all relevant multilateral forums and international organizations. The nations reiterated their commitment to working together to prosecute persons sought for corruption and economic crimes. The commitment was made by the IBSA member states, India, Brazil and South Africa, which was attended by the foreign ministers of the respective countries. It noted that there is a need for the reformation of the multilateral system so as to ensure that it works effectively for all states and its people. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar came out strongly against terrorism in a series of tweets. He said, and I quote, "Ours is really not just a story of missed opportunities, but also a deliberate obstacles. Terrorism is among them." He added that in our view, elimination of terrorism in all its forms is a precondition not only for fruitful cooperation, but also for the very survival of our region itself. Well, for more inputs on the UNGA, Moon Bhattacharya, correspondent tracking the event for us, joins us this morning. Moon, good morning. Moon, how would you look at it? You know, what could be some of the issues that could be presented before the world as issues that affect India, but will have an imprint on the world?
Anil, tomorrow is the big day here, 27th of September in the forenoon at around 10:20 a.m. We expect Prime Minister Narendra Modi to begin his address to the 74th session of the UNGA. He'll be speaking there for the second time after 2014. So after 5 years, the Prime Minister will be speaking there. Well, the issues are quite a few. The first being the issue of reformed multilateralism, which is the issue of reform in the UNSC. Now, remember, India has been making this point consistently that the UNSC, or the United Nations Security Council, where the real power rests of the United Nations, still reflects the realities of the 20th century and not of the 21st century. And reforms are needed in the UNSC to make it more participative, democratic, and to make it more effective in dealing with various challenges that the world faces today, and also legitimate. So this process of reforms has been stuck for a very, very long time, because this issue first came up before the UNGA in 1979. So it's been 40 years of no concrete movement since then. And in 2005, there was a World Summit that was held that underscored the need for early reform. So not much movement or headway has been made, in fact, since then. Text-based negotiations had started, but they've been stuck because of lack of consensus. Any reform requires consensus, in the sense that a two-third majority of the United Nations, 193 member states, need to approve that. Those member states also need to ratify that. And you require the approval of all the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. Now, such a consensus hasn't been seen so far. India has been trying since a very long time to get various countries on board. India is part of the G4 with other countries like Germany, Japan, etc. So India has been consistently trying to make this point in other countries of the G4 also, that it is important to reform the UNSC. It can't reflect the realities of 1945 when the UN was formed, because with regard to developing countries like India, Germany, Japan, or in fact Japan is a developed country, the idea is that the world output has the participation of various countries in the world output has changed. India is contributing quite a bit, and then India feels it is a natural candidate for a permanent membership of the UNSC because of its demographic dividend, its economic rise. Besides that, there are other issues as well, terrorism being one issue. India has consistently raised that. I've read all the speeches of the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister since 2014, and there is no speech where the challenge of counterterrorism is not referred to. Sometimes Pakistan has been named, sometimes Pakistan has not been named. But the sense that I got from the Ministry of External Affairs is that they would like to see the same sort of solidarity on the issue of counterterrorism as we are now seeing here at the United Nations in New York on an issue of climate change. The third point is of sustainable development and of climate change.
You know, what do you think about India's outreach there on the sidelines of the UNGA? You know, Prime Minister has been meeting a lot of world leaders. What could be the, you know, the tangible solutions that we are looking at?
Well, if you are seeing from the context of UNSC reforms, I've given you a lot of background on you know, the G4 and how it's working, and how there is a growing feeling that the text-based negotiations need to start. They've been stalled for a very, very long time. There's a need to rebuild consensus. On the issue of terrorism, India wants to see greater solidarity, because there was recently, you know, in the run-up to Prime Minister's UNGA address, there was a session that was held, a talk that was held, which was Leaders' Dialogue, Strategic Responses to Terrorist and Violent Extremist Narratives. So there the Prime Minister said that it is important to depoliticize an institution like the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, or even UN listings. Remember the entire episode of Masood Azhar and how China took a political call on that, which was changed later, and finally India managed to get Masood Azhar listed as a UN terrorist. So the point that there should be no distinction between good and bad terrorism, the point that India has been making since 1996, since when it's been insisting that the UN adopt a comprehensive convention on international terrorism, which would be an institutional framework in the fight against terrorism, under which terrorists will be prosecuted or extradited to the country where they committed the terrorist crime for prosecution. But again, there is lack of consensus here, and India would like consensus building on both these issues, on reformed multilateralism / UNSC reforms, as well as on the issue of counterterrorism. On climate change, we are playing a leading role. There are various institutions that India has mooted, ISA being one of them, the Coalition on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure being another. On renewable energy, we have increased our targets. We were earlier looking at a target of 175 gigawatts by 2022. We've already achieved 120 gigawatts. Only 55 gigawatts are left, and there is a long time. 3 years we have in hand. So our progress towards attaining sustainable development goals or climate action is pretty good, and now we've set another target of 450 gigawatts over a period of time. So India is shaping a global discourse and shaping the global agenda. India is emerging as a world power in the new world order, and some of that we will see perhaps in tomorrow's address of the Prime Minister.
Purely looking at not only India but the world over, the menace of terrorism, do you feel in this diplomatic showdown there at the UNGA, India clearly holding all the aces and the edge when it comes to support in its fight against terrorism?
Indeed it is. Anil, that there is a new narrative that the government of India is building, which is gaining traction also, and that is that Pakistan is not a normal state, it is not a normal neighbor. S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, has said that what kind of country uses terrorism as an instrument of state policy so openly? What kind of country conducts terrorism by night and business as usual by day? What kind of country does not give MFN status, most favored nation status to India when it is mandated to under WTO norms? So in violation of WTO norms, Pakistan did not give MFN status to India, though India had given MFN status earlier before we decided to withdraw that. What kind of country denies connectivity to a third country? India denied connectivity by Pakistan to Afghanistan. So this is the kind of narrative that is now building up, and it is gaining traction, and that is pretty evident by the fact that there are several countries, including several Islamic countries, including OIC, or if not OIC as a grouping, then at least there are member countries of the OIC that have backed India on Article 370. People are seeing through the rhetoric of Pakistan on the issue of Kashmir. Here also there have been protests by Muhajirs, etc. There have been protests by Balochis in the past against the kind of human rights violations that we've seen in Pakistan against religious and ethnic minorities. So I think Pakistan stands exposed the world over, and that is why we are seeing, Imran Khan an isolated man today.
We'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us with those inputs. We'll come back to you in the evening. You've got a busy day ahead. Take good care of yourself. We'll come back to you in the evening at around 7 p.m. when the Prime Minister will address the UNGA. Well, staying with that story, watch Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address at the United Nations General Assembly live from 7 p.m. today, only on DD News and DD India. Well, back home, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has called upon paramilitary forces, the police and the civil administration in Kashmir Valley to win the hearts and minds of the people and immediately respond to emergencies and any issues raised by the people. Chairing a high-level meeting in Srinagar on Thursday, Doval gave clear instructions to the security forces and administration that in view of the reports that Pakistan-sponsored terror outfits may carry out some demonstrative and sensational acts of terror, the security of vital installations must be ensured and all arrangements regarding strict vigilance be made a priority. Doval was on a second visit of Kashmir Valley after the 5th of August. He was appraised that Pakistan-sponsored terrorist outfits were indulging in various atrocities on people, killing shopkeepers, threatening and intimidating fruit growers. He directed all the concerned departments and agencies to take strict action against such elements and help the last man standing as much as possible. Well, today is World Tourism Day. Vice President Venkaiah Naidu in a tweet called upon the youth to visit tourist destinations in the country to understand the rich cultural heritage of India. He added that travelling teaches many things and it introduces us to the diverse cultures of the world. NASA's lunar orbiter mission has imaged that the targeted landing site of India's Chandrayaan-2 lander Vikram. In a tweet, NASA shared the images that were taken at dusk. It's said that the team was not able to locate the lander. More images will be taken in October during a flyby in favorable lighting. Moving to international stories now, the United States has announced deployment of 200 troops as well as the Patriot missiles to Saudi Arabia to help the country's defense in the wake of last month's attacks on its oil installations. The Defense Department said that the deployment would involve one battery of the surface-to-air missiles along with 4 Sentinel radars used for air and missile defense systems. In addition, 2 more Patriot batteries and 1 THAAD ballistic missile interception systems are being readied in case a decision is made to also supply them to Saudi Arabia. USA asserted that the decision demonstrated commitment to regional partners and the security and stability in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Iran has reiterated that it can discuss other issues with the United States, providing its 2050 nuclear deal with 6 powers is fully implemented. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that Tehran's missile capabilities were not negotiable. Rouhani also touched on the subject of swaps of United States and Iranian prisoners, saying Iran had released 1 prisoner, but United States has failed to reciprocate. Former French President Jacques Chirac, a major force in French politics who opposed the 2003 US-led invasion of Iraq, died in Paris on Thursday at the age of 86. Chirac gained international notoriety near the start of his second term when he stood up to President George W. Bush as the American leader pushed his case for war with Iraq at the United Nations. A dominant figure in French politics for 4 decades, Jacques Chirac's career included 2 presidential terms, 2 stints as prime minister, and nearly 2 decades as mayor of Paris. During his 2 terms as French president, Jacques Chirac took his country into the single European currency. The French National Assembly held a minute's silence in honor of the former French president. France has declared a national day of mourning on September 30th, that's the coming Monday, for the former French president. President Ramnath Kovind expressed grief over the passing away of Jacques Chirac. In a tweet, he said, "A tall leader and a statesman, he was a great friend of India. My sincere condolences to the French people in this hour of grief." Prime Minister Narendra Modi also extended his deepest condolences on the passing away of the former French President Jacques Chirac. In a tweet, he said, "India mourns the loss of a true global statesman, a friend of India. He played a decisive role in establishing and building India-France strategic partnership." The United States, meanwhile, concluded the government of President Bashar al-Assad in Syria used chlorine as a chemical weapon in a May attack as part of his battle with Idlib. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, addressing a news conference on Thursday, said that the Assad regime is responsible for innumerable atrocities, some of which rise to the level of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Pompeo said he had not yet fully read the whistleblower's complaint about the U.S. President Donald Trump's interactions with the leader of Ukraine, but that he believed that the State Department had acted appropriately. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, threw open its doors to tourists on Friday, launching a new visa program for 49 countries. Saudi Arabia also appealed to the foreign companies to invest in a sector it hopes to contribute 10% of gross domestic product by 2030. Visas will be available online for about $80 with no restrictions for unaccompanied women as in the past. Access to the Muslim holy cities of Mecca and Medina is restricted. Until now, foreigners traveling to Saudi Arabia have been largely restricted to resident workers and their dependents, business travelers and Muslim pilgrims who receive special visas to visit holy sites. The RSS Nepal organized a seminar on Article 370 of the Constitution of India, its perception and reality in Kathmandu. It urged countries across the world to support Indian government's decision on Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. They also called all to be aware and informed about the state, its people and cross-border terrorism issue. RSS Nepal said they firmly believe that India has the acumen to resolve this matter peacefully. Here's a report.
राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ अखिल भारतीय प्रचार प्रमुख अरुण कुमार has urged countries across the world to support government of India's decision on Jammu and Kashmir. Delivering a keynote address on Article 370 of the Constitution of India, Perception and Reality in Kathmandu last evening, he said that the decision was taken as per the provisions of Indian Constitution for development and prosperity of the people.
पाकिस्तान जो है 47, 65, 70 मंथ कारगिल उसने अटैक किया, लगातार वो आतंकवाद को बढ़ा रहा। परिणाम क्या है? दुनिया की इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी को पाकिस्तान से सवाल करना चाहिए। पाकिस्तान ऑक्युपाइड जम्मू कश्मीर के 2 लाख परिवार, 50,000 लोगों की हत्या हुई थी 47 में। जम्मू कश्मीर भारत का हिस्सा है, जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग भारत के लोग हैं, भारत के लोग जिसमें जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग शामिल है वो और अपने देश के संविधान के अंतर्गत अपने देश के उत्थान और विकास के अंदर अपनी भूमिका अदा करें और भारत के संविधान के जो लाभ सबको मिल रहे हैं वो लाभ वहां के लोगों को मिले। इसके लिए भारत सरकार ने कोई निर्णय किया है तो उसके लिए पूरी दुनिया का हर देश की सरकार उसको समर्थन करना चाहिए।
Arun Kumar said that there is some misinformation or lack of information about the people within India and abroad about Jammu and Kashmir. He made a presentation with facts and figures to clear myths and said that the real problem of Jammu and Kashmir is cross-border terrorism.
Across the party line लोगों ने सपोर्ट किया, इवन जिन पार्टी ने अपोज किया उन पार्टीज के भी बहुत सारे लोगों ने अपनी पार्टीज को कहा कि वी आर ऑन वन पाथ, हमको इसको सपोर्ट करना चाहिए। भारत के लोगों की विल, टोटल सोसाइटी उसके पीछे आकर खड़ी थी। पीपल का भी पूरा सपोर्ट था, मीडिया का भी सपोर्ट था। मेरे मन में आता है कि दुनिया में परेशान कौन है? तो दुनिया में केवल एक देश परेशान है इसको लेकर, जिस देश में आधे से ज्यादा समय मिलिट्री रूल रहा।
Indian ambassador to Nepal, Manjeev Singh Puri, said the decision was taken after a thorough debate in Parliament.
All of them were debated in the Indian Parliament. Thoroughly debated over 2-3 days, and thereafter passed with huge numbers and huge majority in the Indian Parliament. They have therefore the imprimatur, जिसको कहते हैं मोर, भारत के लोगों का मोर।
The talk was organized by Niti Anusandhan Pratishthan Nepal and the National Law College in Nepal.
Well, staying with international stories, Bangladesh will erect barbed wire fence around the Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar soon. Bangladesh Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan said in Dhaka that Prime Minister has directed to put fence to maintain law and order in the camps and to ensure the safety and security. In the meanwhile, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina appealed to the world leaders to take measures to compel Myanmar to create conditions enabling the Rohingyas safe, dignified and voluntary repatriation to their ancestral. Speaking at a function in New York on Wednesday, Sheikh Hasina said that the Bangladesh government has built houses, cyclone shelters and food warehouses at Bhashan Char Island to shift Rohingyas there. The government has developed Bhashan Char as an alternative location to accommodate 1 lakh Rohingya refugees in 1,440 buildings constructed there. Bhashan Char is located 21 nautical miles from now khali in an estuary in the Meghna river. Moving to Turkey, 8 people were slightly injured after a moderate 5.7 magnitude earthquake shook buildings and damaged 2 mosques in Istanbul. The top section of a minaret had collapsed at the central mosque in Istanbul, close to the Marmara Sea. Another minaret collapsed in the Şehriye district of the city. The tremor was at a depth of 12.6 kilometers and the epicenter was located to 70 kilometers west of Istanbul in the Marmara Sea. 3 major seismic fault lines crisscross Istanbul, which straddles Europe and Asia. Well, after a look at all the international stories, it's time now to come back home and look at all the what's making buzz in the world of business. My colleague Ajay comes on board.
Thanks very much, Anil. Here are the top story of top lines today. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman held a meeting with the representative of the private sector banks and financial institutions. She later said that none of the bankers complained about a liquidity problem.
I have not heard liquidity as a problem from anybody. That is one thing which I want to take as a message. If anything, more liquidity reaching them, they see a demand waiting there and they wouldn't mind extending further facility. However, they have some reservations because of given RBI rules.
The centre also announced that private sector banks will join the outreach program in 400 districts of potential lending. The first round of the bank outreach program will be held in 250 districts from October 3rd to October 7th. The FM also said that the bankers have assessed that a slump in commercial vehicle sales is cyclical, while sentiments are driving lower passengers vehicle sale. FM also said that the rural demand is still intact in rural areas.
Many of the MFIs and microfinance units which have come here are in the deep country. They are in absolutely rural, densely populated rural areas, whether in the north or in the south or in the west. So almost near unanimity prevailed that in those areas there's still demand, there's still activity going on, and they're going on extending their loans.
The government said that the things are looking up and consumption appetite is improving. Demand is likely to get a big boost in the festive season going ahead. And the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be holding a meeting in Delhi today with the secretaries and financial advisors of key selected ministries to review total capex by the ministries in 2019-20 till now and plan for the future capex in the current financial year. The capex is capital expenditure by the government and the PSUs. The CBDT has extended the September 30th deadline by a month for filing income tax returns for special cases requiring audit reports. The new deadline is October 31st. On consideration of representations from across the country, CBDT has decided to extend the due date of filing of ITR and tax audit reports from 30th September 2019 to 31st of October 2019 in respect of persons whose accounts are required to be audited. It said a formal notification for the same will be issued soon. The GST network, the IT backbone of the indirect tax system, on Thursday unveiled an online refund process as decided by the GST Council. With the deployment of online refund functionality, taxpayers can now file refund application in RFD01 form easily and tax officers can process the same online. GST network said in a statement, all communications between taxpayers and tax officers will also be online. The online refund process has become effective from September 25th on the GST portal. Earlier, the refund processing was done for both centre and state GST by one tax authority to whom the taxpayers was assigned administratively. But disbursement of the GST refund was done by accounting authorities in central and state tax department separately. But now the things will be smoothened. It will be online processing for all the GST taxpayers. So that's all in the finance world.
Well, thank you, Ajay, for those inputs from the world of finance. It's time now to shift focus to sports and what's making news. Indian men's hockey team beat Belgium 2-0 in the first test in Belgium. Second half goals from forwards Mandeep Singh and Akashdeep Singh secured a 2-0 win for the men's hockey team against Belgium in the opening match of the 5-match series to be played beginning from Thursday. India will next take on Spain tomorrow at the same venue. India will take on Maldives in the semi-final of the SAF Under-18 Football Championship 2019 in Kathmandu today. The match will start at 2:45 p.m. Indian time. India had defeated Sri Lanka by 3-0 in its last league match on Wednesday, while it was held to a goalless draw by Bangladesh in the opening game. The first semi-final between Bangladesh and Bhutan will be played in the morning at 10:45. Host Nepal and Sri Lanka had crashed out of the championship already. Well, Fit India movement is a nationwide movement to encourage people to remain healthy and fit by including physical activities and sports in their daily lives. Started on the 29th of August this year, Fit India movement has gathered momentum in the country, and taking cue from the Prime Minister's clarion call is two of India's brightest young squash talents, Anahat Singh and Amira Singh, and they have supported the initiative.
Fit India movement has gathered momentum in the country, and taking cue from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's clarion call is two of India's brightest young squash talents, Anahat Singh and Amira Singh. Both sisters had a fairy tale run so far. 16-year-old Amira went on to win bronze at the DPD Dutch Junior Open. Amira, who is ranked inside the top 4 in the country, said that Fit India campaign could be a game changer for the country and believed that playing squash is a great way to promote the concept of Fit India.
I really loved playing squash. I enjoyed it a lot more than other sports. It also helped me develop my fitness quite a bit. Overall fitness is very important for everyone. Fit India movement is very important, as since I said fitness is very important. It helps you stay healthy, and it improves your mental and physical well-being.
Amira's younger sister Anahat is just 11-year-old and has scaled even more heights in the game. In a span of 3 years, Anahat has won 36 national and 5 international titles and is seated number 1 in the country. The current under-11 British junior champion has also won gold at the European Junior Open and is playing the game since she was just 6-year-old.
I've been playing squash for the past 3 to 4 years, and my recent win was the European and Dutch Junior Open, where I came first. I'm number 1 in India and number 4 in Asia. I like the game as it's a fast game, and I'm really active, and I like to run around, and it's like a fun game to play.
With Prime Minister Narendra Modi throwing his weight behind the initiative, there is little doubt that fitness has come to be the main point of agenda among the countrymen. The Fit India movement launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken the country by storm. Leading the bandwagon is the woman power, and the classic example of that is the story of Amira and Anahat Singh. Both these ladies playing squash and making sure that they make the country proud. With cameraman Smurti Ranjan, this is Taposh Bhattacharya, DD News, Delhi.
Well, time now to take a look at the top stories published in the newspapers from the national capital. Our first look is at the Hindu, and the Karnataka by-polls will be deferred. That's what the Election Commission has told the Supreme Court. Court to hear the dissident MLA's petition now on October 22nd, and the Election Commission has said in the Supreme Court that it would defer the by-elections to the 15 Karnataka Assembly constituencies till the court finally decided the petitions of the MLAs who represented these constituencies until they were disqualified by the then Speaker K.R. Ramesh Kumar under the anti-defection law. Moving ahead to the Hindustan Times on the front pages, as bad air season nears, India lags behind on AQI monitoring. The reason for this particular story to crop up is for the simple, if you look at the sizing of the problem, experts feel that proper monitoring is crucial to address this particular problem. And if you see, per million people in India is just 0.4, while if you look at the European countries, per million people 2.2 to 3 machines, monitoring station density machines are easily available. And looking at the existing stations in India, Delhi leads the cap with 48, Mumbai, Bangalore having 10 each. The costs involved in this is huge, 1.8 crore for 7 years of operation and maintenance of an automatic machine for keeping the AQI in check. Our next look is at the Indian Express. This is a story there in the inside pages on Andhra Pradesh setting to launch schemes for farmers, also including tenants. Landless and tenant farmers of Andhra Pradesh are set to get monetary support from the government there under the YSR Raitu Bharosa scheme. Under the scheme set to be launched on the 15th of October, 36 lakh tenant farmers will receive 12,500 per annum as farm investment support. There is a cash crunch in the state, but the Chief Minister has decided to go ahead with the scheme, hoping that the farming community will be on his side in the coming years. Our final look is at the Times of India. This is a story with regards to the World Athletic Championship that begins in Doha today. Athletics seeking a new showstopper, the first World Athletic Championship that we are seeing since Usain Bolt and since 2003. Number of countries in the fray 210 and number of athletes 2043. A reality check also for India, because India has just got one medal at the World Athletic Championship. That's Anju Bobby George, who got the medal in 2003 in Paris. India has never managed to win glory at the World Athletic Championship, and Neeraj's injury along with Hima Das injury, clearly not much of a ray of hope, but we always got to expect some talent to crop up there from the World Athletic Championship. Well, moving ahead now, time to take a look at what's making news from the world of history on this very day, September 27th.
Roy, famous social reformer and founder of Brahmo Samaj, passed away at Stapleton Grove in England. His efforts to protect Hinduism and Indian rights earned him the title the father of the Indian Renaissance. On the same day in 1825, the first locomotive to haul a passenger train was operated by George Stephenson in England. The British engineers Richard Trevithick and George Stephenson were the first innovators of the technology. On this day in 1988, National League for Democracy was formed by Aung San Suu Kyi and various others to help fight against dictatorship in Myanmar. On the same day in 1998, the Google Internet search engine began operating.
Well, time now to take a look at heart-related problems and that can lead to death in the absence of money. It is not possible to manage the expense of the treatment, but after Ayushman Bharat scheme implementation, people are availing benefits and getting free treatment. Let's take a look at this report from Nalanda.
Pramod Kumar, a resident of Oknama village of Nalanda district, suddenly came to know about his heart problem. Not being financially well off, Kumar was not able to manage the expenses for his operation. Under Ayushman Bharat, he was treated free and stent was placed in his heart. Pramod Kumar is now fit and fine and praising Prime Minister Modi for a scheme like Ayushman Bharat which saved his life.
हार्ट का बीमारी हो गया था और हम अपने पैसा से दिखा नहीं पाते, हम बहुत गरीब थे, किसान तबका के लोग हैं। तो आयुष्मान भारत जो मोदी जी योजना निकाले, इसके तहत मैं अपना बीमारी हार्ट का बीमारी पटना में जाकर दिखाया और मुफ्त ऑपरेशन करवाया और एक पैसा हमको वहाँ कुछ नहीं लगा और मैं मोदी जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ।
Around 65,000 rupees was spent on his treatment, but he had not to pay a single paisa from his pocket. Kumar's wife Sangeeta Kumari is very happy with the free treatment of his husband.
मेरे पति का हार्ट का प्रॉब्लम था तो मैंने पटना लेके गया इलाज, वहाँ पर आयुष्मान भारत का कार्ड दिखाएं तो वहाँ फ्री इलाज हुआ है और ठीक हो गए हैं।
The family of Pramod Kumar is also praising the Modi government for providing free medical facility to the poor.
अंकल का ये हार्ट का पेशेंट है, वो उनका इलाज हुआ प्रधानमंत्री आयुष्मान योजना के अंतर्गत, और उनका इलाज पूरा फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट हुआ पटना के एक हॉस्पिटल में। जब हम लोग वहाँ गए तो पता चला कि आयुष्मान योजना है, वहाँ फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट पूरा इलाज होगा।
Many people like Pramod Kumar are taking benefit of central government schemes like Ayushman Bharat. Till date, at least 897 patients have been treated under Ayushman Bharat Yojana in Nalanda district. Bureau Report, DD News.
Well, time now to take a look at the weather in your city. Well, before we end this edition of Breakfast Show, we leave you with a positive thought to kickstart your day. There is no such thing as lack of time, only lack of focus. We can do all the things we really want to do. Our image of the day, glimpses of the Lego exhibition in Denmark, where Coral Reef and Rock Band are on show. Take a look, smile, stay safe and healthy. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Bye-bye.